Lisa from Been There, Got Out. And today is part two of the conversation that we started several weeks ago with our really good friend outside of Been There, Got Out, Dr. Barb Hughson. And there's Dr. Wayne. He's coming too. Today, in the past, we did some with me and Chris and Dr. Barb and Dr. Wayne, but Chris has broken his arm and he's not going to be on with us. And wait, where is Dr. Barb? Let's see. Hi, Wayne. I'm looking for Barb. I don't see her. It's going to be
She's
three of us.
tardy. Keep going. She's tardy.
Okay. All right. I'm like, how am I going to see her when she joins? Okay. Anyway, but we can just start.
What happened to Mr. Chris?
So Chris was walking. There he is. He was walking his dog, and a car went through a stop sign, and he went backwards and broke the same arm that I broke this past summer in California, same place. And so he's like, I think I'm just going to monitor the comments. So it'll just be the two of us. I'm looking for Dr. Barb. Where is Dr. Barb? Not here yet. But let's see. Okay, Chris, I know you're on. Just tell me if you see her, like text me or something, because I'm just going to get started with Dr. Wayne, and hopefully she'll be on any second, because she said that she's ready to go. So maybe she's having problems with her phone. So anyway, Dr. Wayne, thank you so much for coming back. You know, I've been excited to have you back again. And just in the last day or two, we've gotten questions from a couple of clients and people we've spoken to that I'm like, it's your lucky day, because today we have an expert on. And we said last time that one of the top questions we get and concerns, which I myself had when I was getting out of my 20-year marriage relationship with two kids who were teen and tween. There she is. Dr. Barb is here. Teens and tweens, thinking like, oh my gosh, their lives are going to be completely destroyed because of what's happened. And how are they going to be okay? And I don't know what to do. So can you please again comfort or offer something to let people know that their lives are not necessarily over and their kids' lives are not necessarily destroyed because of what's going on with their parents?
Yes, things are going to be okay. You just got to keep saying that again and again and again, because they don't feel okay. Everything you're doing is so not okay. But there's a whole bunch of sides to you. And when you're with your kids, I'm sure there's more tenderness than when you're with the legal system. So make sure you include tenderness in your life every day. That's how you get to the other side.
Yeah. Barb, you have anything to offer? Because I know both of you have, I'm going to ask you to go into your professional backgrounds before we get started. But Barb, we know you have a background in child psychology, among other many things.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks for having us on again. I talk to a lot of parents about the self-care piece, and that is so important. And I think we talked about that last time as well. And, making sure you're really taking care of yourself ensures that you're a really solid, strong parent to help your children through this. And I see parents that are just puddles, they're just a mess and they're having a really hard time finding their footing. So don't forget to focus on your own self-care, and really take care of your pieces that you're struggling with, because that's really ultimately going to help your children.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so why don't you two, I guess starting with Dr. Wayne, go a little bit about into your backgrounds and just introduce yourselves.
Oh my goodness. I have been a teacher for over 50 years. I have taught the grandkids of people I first taught in my career, which is way cool. And mostly I've taught all the grades from pre-K to graduate school, but my love is elementary age kids and middle school age kids, just because they have so much fire. And they've taught me a whole lot about how to live a balanced life, how to live in harmony. And that's what I try to do every day.
Right, but you help a lot of kids with trauma in particular.
Yeah, I have a mindfulness practice. So I have kids on Zoom that we do mindfulness sessions with. And I tutor on SEL, social emotional learning, and there's big need out there. People are really suffering, and they don't know where to take that suffering. And then usually there's a crisis happens, and violence happens, words, deeds, whatever. And mostly what they need to do is take a deep breath and just reassess, stand back and look. Most people have lots of common sense, but they get all riled up. So the mindfulness and the SEL help calm them down.
Good. All right, Barb, tell them
Hey,
who you are again.
here I am again. So yeah, Dr. Barb, and I started my professional career as a therapist, and I was in private practice for years working with kids and families. I used to run divorce groups for kids in schools, and just love working with kids of all ages. I love teenagers. I love little kids. I used to do a lot of creative arts with kids. And then I shifted into doing mediation and family law work. And a lot of the mediators that I know come from the attorney background. So what I've learned through the years is that actually having the mental health therapist background is actually really helpful. As people move through the court process, there's a lot of emotional stuff that happens. And again, kids, even if you don't, plan on it or know that it's happening, kids do end up in the middle of the conflict. So that's what I work with parents around that a lot and just helping them recognize what do they add to this mix that could be harming their kids, because sometimes we just don't see it. We're just in the thick of it. We can't see the forest for the trees. So yeah, so that's a lot of what I do now within in this arena is doing parent coaching with parents who may already have orders, and then helping them with the mediation process, creating parenting plans, dividing assets. That's just logistics, or dividing money and all that. That's things that have to be done. But the parenting plan, I always find, is just that's the most important piece. Your children are, that's the core of this whole thing. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have been so helpful to several of our clients, and especially having that background and being able to put the kids first as you're putting orders together and parenting plans is really the most important thing. So thank you. And already thank you, Dr. Wayne, because I know some of ours are going to be working with you shortly and thereafter. So anyway, I'm just going to start with something that, like I said, in the last couple of days, we've gotten two issues that seem to be first and foremost, and that's about helping kids develop boundaries. So often our people are dealing with some sort of domestic abuse. Often it's psychological. And once the targeted parent gets out of the home, of course, the kids are still dealing with everything. And so often we're dealing with a parent that's a victim of coercive control, and they're concerned with their kids and establishing boundaries. So one person in particular, and I'm bringing this up because we've heard this so many times, is saying that when their child has FaceTime and they're ready to finish the call or finish the visit, they say they're ready to go, and the other parent keeps pushing them to stay on. And the parent that we deal with are like, I don't want to get involved, but how do I handle it? How do I teach my kids to establish boundaries with a parent, which of course bleeds over into the rest of their lives? How do I help my kid establish boundaries?
That's a tough question.
I know, that's why I gave it to you first.
What I am about to say might sound simplistic, and maybe that's the best we can hope for in that kind of a situation. In my mindfulness classes, we usually end about taking our emotional temperature. And I have this scale that kids use from 1 to 10. And the image I have is of two women. They have backsacks on. They're going into the forest. And then you see the bubble over each person's brain. And one woman just sees the trees and the suns and the clouds. And the other woman has got a bubble full of confusion, taxes and money and people and traffic. And she's overwhelmed. So I say the overwhelmed is a 10 and the other picture is a 1. What are you right now? Kids will go right there. They'll tell you. And then you tell them you yourself, and you have a conversation. That could be a way to end the Zoom call. That's a boundary that you set that's very easy. A closure is this. We're not going to talk anymore after that. Boom.
Yeah, it does sound really simple. Barb, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, that's been done, right?
It
Yeah,
gets it done.
right. And I love that too. And that's really the whole thing around empowering kids and really helping, as I just mentioned, self-care. It's important for the parents to work on their stuff, but we also have to really support the kids and give them a voice. And that's what I work with parents around, is again helping them with their kids. Again, I've sent kids to Dr. Wayne's like, "Whoo, this kid needs to learn how to be present and in the moment and deflect some of that energy from the parent." And so, of course, it's age dependent, right? If you have really young kids, they don't last too long on a Zoom call anyway. They're usually off doing something else. But as kids get older, for them to be able to learn how to verbalize and say, I have to go, or I've got homework to do, or be able to speak out what they need in that moment. And so that's really just a lot of one-on-one working with the kids. Again, that's where therapy can be helpful, to really helping the kids build their voice and feel comfortable saying, hey, I can't do this. I have a great story. I think years ago, I worked with a couple sisters, and they were getting older. They were like early teens, and they were supposed to go all summer long to their dad's. And the mom called me and said, I don't know, the girls are a mess. They want to go to dad's for part of the summer, but not all of the summer, but they don't know how to tell them. And so I worked with the girls directly and had sessions with them, and we role played like, okay, what would it look like if you said this to dad? And I actually was in the background when they decided to make that phone call to their dad. I was actually there when they did it, and they felt so good about it. And dad didn't react as they thought he was going to, but we made a plan. We helped them, I helped them come up with a clear plan of how would you, what are you going to say to dad? What is your reasoning? And they had all sorts of fun things planned where they lived with their friends, and they didn't want to miss out on that. So it was that whole conversation of like, dad, we really love you and we want to see you, but this is important to us as well. So here's what we want to do. And so the two of them talking to their dad, it was amazing, but it took a few sessions of, time with me with the girls to get to that point of confidence where they felt like, oh, I can finally say, we can finally say this to dad and it'll be okay.
Yeah, and that's making me think about not just children dealing with a parent, but helping them deal with adults who are more needy. Because we know the dynamic in a lot of these situations is a parent, and sometimes it's both parents for whatever reason, they tend to be emotionally needy to their kids. Do you have any comments on that? Because that's hard. Like, I think about my own situation with my ex telling my daughter, like, it's my birthday, and why didn't you call me? And she's 11, and it's, she's feeling terrible. And I'm thinking, why are you saying this to her? But I can't get it, I couldn't get in the middle of that. So how would someone deal with something like that?
By dealing with it. That 11-year-old said, I'm sorry I was late, or whatever else was really going on. I think it's important for kids to learn to be vulnerable and to share their authenticity. I have great intent. My follow through isn't so good. I'm working on it. You got to share your humanity. And everyone is not perfect 24/7. And that's a real important skill, not only for kids to learn, but for adults to relearn.
Yeah. And again, it's, I can't stress enough the importance of therapy for kids. And, we're not saying anything's wrong with the children. We're just saying right now in this moment, they need some extra support. And in therapy, that's where they can learn to, again, use the language of emotions to say, dad, I get really frustrated, or mom, could go either way. Like, I get really frustrated when you say stuff like that, or that makes me really sad. But, I have other things going on in my life, and that's okay. I'll call you on your birthday, I'll whatever. But to get kids, because that's a great skill for them as they grow into adulthood too, for any
Right, like learning how to advocate for themselves. Because I think part of the reason many of us get involved in these situations is we put other people's emotional needs before our own, and that's hard to unlearn.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so now we have a situation where we know the kid needs therapy, but they refuse to go. how do you handle when kids refuse to go to therapy? Because I know for a period of time, one of my kids refused to go and then ended up going later, and it was so helpful later, but I felt like it should have happened sooner.
You also have to be very clear about a kid's motivation for wanting therapy. Is the kid going to therapy because mom insists on it, or because a court order demands it, or because there's some healing that's going to be going on? And given however old a kid is, I think it's important to ask them, how are you doing right now? It doesn't look like you're doing well. Do you want to do better? What are you doing that's working? What are you not doing that could work? And just be in that conversation. We call this conversating, getting down to the brass tacks. And sometimes all a kid can do is just things that turn that kid on and give that kid passion. Maybe it's stretching or yoga or taking a walk with the dog. That's therapy. That's the beginning of therapy. So I think that conversation, a big conversation, needs to happen before you say, we need to go have a sit down with a counselor. That's a good objective, but a whole lot of water needs to happen before you get it to that place.
Yeah, before even Barb responds to that, I'm thinking that we just did an interview with Dawn Brower, who's known as Secure Babies on Instagram, and she talked a lot about self-care, and she was saying that one of the things that people can do, so kids, you're making me think kids as well, is do anything that makes them feel good. That's not harmful, of course, but like even looking at little Instagram videos of puppies and babies and things that get those pleasure hormones going. And that's what I hear when you say about, you know, the kid first has to do things that make them feel good, especially in these tense situations.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a real quick story and then let Barb respond. When I'm tutoring kids and the kids have massive fears about whatever it is I'm tutoring, there's just no logic in dividing mixed fractions. They just can't get it. This gets me in trouble with my boss. I'll let them show me stuff from their TikTok account, and they're showing me dogs and dancing elephants and just silly things. And I'm saying, I can only handle so much more of that, and then we have to get back. And they're good with that. And then we get back and do the hard thing. Kids got to have something they can feel good about before doing the hard thing.
That's such a great point.
Yeah. Yep. And, you know, and I've said this before too, I think is, you know, a therapy session can be magic if you find the right therapist. And that's, I always kind of emphasize that too, is you want to make sure you can find someone that is your child's really going to connect with. And if you find your child's not connecting, find a different therapist. That's okay. You know, people sometimes feel like I can't, you know, I can't change. But, you know, I would say to kids, you know, I'm not mom or dad. And so I know there's a lot of things that you don't say to either one of them. And I'm a safe person. You can say those things too. And that's okay. So sometimes even just presenting it that way, like, you know I'm your mom. Like, I know you don't tell me everything. And I know you don't tell your dad everything probably either. Sometimes it helps to just talk to somebody that you don't know that can really help you, you can just get all those things out that you want to say, and you'll feel better, you know, and really talk about that piece as well. So, therapy can be magical because I'm not mom or dad. And oh my gosh, I had some things come out of kids that I would say, whoa, you know, does your mom know this or does your dad know this? Oh no, I haven't said that to either one. And sometimes it's things I would say, I wonder if they should know, you know, if they, maybe mom should know this. How could we tell mom? Again, it was really trying to empower the kids to be able to use their voices, just like I did with those sisters with their dad. Like, you know, I think your dad should probably know why you don't want to spend all summer. Let's figure out what's the best way to say that expresses what you guys are needing, you know, in this moment, and do it in a way where you guys feel better and dad feels okay about it. And you can still see dad and everyone can still get a little of what they need. And that's important.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I didn't tell you I was going to ask you about this, but of course I just thought of it. Do either of you have experience with reunification therapy? Because that's another biggie that our audience is gets very emotional about.
I haven't.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I was just talking to a parent on the phone yesterday about working a father back into a situation. Now, obviously, I'm not working as a therapist in that case, but those, we tend to look at those as a slower road. Um, Sometimes that other parent wants to just jump back in, and that is usually not the best thing for the child. I talk with both parents about the importance of just kind of easing back in. And this can be cases I've had, it was a parent disappeared for years. It wasn't like a couple months, like they're gone. And sadly, I've had cases where actually a parent has just relinquished all rights. I've actually seen those happen. But kind of that moving back in, I think, is into the situation is really important. And again, age dependent on the child. But we have to ease into those kinds of things and not just because, again, that can be very anxiety provoking for kids. Like all of a sudden this parent's coming back and there's been some stuff going on with that parent previously. So it's got to be a slow go. I always recommend that.
Yeah, I was going to say what you're describing is definitely what our clients experience, because we tend to deal with the parent and child who have been estranged, and often the child is very, very resistant, and the other parent is really pushing it, and the therapy's been court ordered, so there's a lot of pressure. How do you handle that when let's say you do have a parent that's pushing, like, I need to be reconnected to my kid right now. I'm blaming the other parent for keeping me away from the kid. How do you navigate that with the kid and everybody? I know these are hard questions.
Yeah. I've seen it totally backfire where a parent pushes in and they've lost the kid. For at least for now, they are not going to see that child anytime soon. I've had that happen with a young teenage boy where the father just pushed, and he blew the whole thing up. And I had talked to the dad about it. I said, this has to be a slow ease back in. And he would not listen to me, and he forced himself back in, and that kid lost it. And he said, I am never seeing my dad again. And again, I always say everything is right for right now because we don't know what's going to happen down the road. But I mean, that was a bad thing. So it's got to be a slow, and the other thing I talked to a lot of parents about, like this one I talked to on the phone the other day, was using supervised visits as a way to ease back in. And I always recommend having a therapist do the supervised visit, because they're going to be more in tune with the emotional pieces. They're going to know what to look for. And if there's a chance that, if I'm involved, I'll try to talk to the therapist ahead of time and just say, be on alert for these things, these behaviors. But that's a supervised setting is a little bit, kids do a little bit better with that because they know someone else is there. And so that's something, you can ask the court for that. Say like, I'd like to start with supervised visits with the other parent because they haven't seen them for 3 years. So is there a way we can work into this slowly? And supervised visits is a good way to do that. And the other parent
That's
can
great.
do that. They don't
Never
want.
heard that. Never heard that, Barb. Thank you so much for that tip, because we're definitely going to share that one as like a stepping stone to anything.
I think you need to label what that stepping stone is too. So a supervised visit is a safe place for the kid, for the parents. And it's important to have this question in everyone's mind. What kind of an emotional mood do you want? If you want this, Dad, you're going to get this kind of response. So don't be surprised when it happens. How can we prepare so everyone wins? Everyone's happy. And again, have a conversation earlier before you even get to the supervised visit state of what makes me safe and what makes me not safe. You got to share your trauma. Everyone in the room has to share where they're at. And then say, okay, now how do we go forward? And then let whatever love's in the room and common sense prevail.
Yeah, that's so important too, about what kind of I'm thinking like, what's the quality of the relationship? Like, what's the goal of the quality of the relationship? So yeah, you're going to be back in this kid's life, but is it going to be forced and pressured and they feel like they don't have a choice? Or do you
Absolutely.
actually want to repair whatever's happened and have it grow in a positive way from there? So yeah, great. All right. So another thing, and this theme seems to be coming out. We talked a little tiny bit about it in the last conversation we had about how in a divorce or a custody battle that the kids are the ones holding the bag, and it's really important for them to have a receptive audience. You want to talk a little more about that?
I'll start. My experience with kids is the number one thing that drives them, their chief concern is, do I belong? Am I a valued person in this little community we call family? So the adults are bickering. The adults are scaring me. I think that anything you do as you go forward is allow the kid to feel not only safe, but help the kid learn, become empowered to share how they're dealing with their trauma immediately in real time. It's a lot harder later on when it's been repressed and it has to be dealt with some fairly heavy therapy. Try to keep it in the moment as much as possible. Hard conversations, but what we teach in our classes is how to do those conversations safely.
Can you give me an example, Dr. Wayne, of like what a kid might say when they're sharing what they're going through to a parent that you consider maybe healthy versus not so helpful?
I want to kill you is probably not very healthy.
Yeah.
So I moved from there. And, you know, you have to forgive me. I have a quirky sense of humor. I say this to adults, I say it to kids. I use Dr. Phil as my guide. How's that working for you? You just trashed the principal's office and you think you're right? How's that working for you? What else could you have done? And they're going to say nothing. I said, and how's that working? You just keep saying it until they get really pissed off. And then you can start to have the conversation. We call that conversating. Until you have that conversation, nothing really healthy is going to happen. They've got to be a willing participant. I don't find anything else working.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Barb, I wasn't sure if you wanted to add anything to that.
No, I think, and again, that's the important thing about kids learning the language of emotions too. I think we kind of touched on that once before too, is knowing how to express their emotions, not just by having a blowout, or like you said, trashing the principal's office or whatever it is, but what's going on, and to be able to say, I'm really frustrated because, or I'm really angry because. And so teaching kids the language of emotions, which not all adults have that either. You know,
Right?
yeah, we're more than just mad, sad, glad. You know, there's there's so many other things. And so really learning, how to express themselves using language, not hitting or screaming or all of these other things. So healthy ways to emote, and that includes, using the language of emotions. So for parents to, and I tell parents, like, listen to how they're feeling, like what they're saying, and to be able to say, you know, wow, how are you feeling about that? Or I that would make me really sad. How are you feeling? Your mom didn't show up today to get you. How do you feel? I'd be really sad or disappointed. And using those words and that language with kids gets them to know, like, oh, it's okay to say how I'm feeling. Mom tells me how she's feeling. Dad says how he's feeling. So it just becomes more commonplace. And we don't often do that. Again, we're reactive. We scream, we yell, we do all these things, and we don't often use emotional language to say what's going on. So I think part of that is important too.
And I also want to piggyback on what Dr. Barb is saying. It's helping kids become more aware.
Yes.
So it's norming the situation. She's talking about emotions. You can talk equally about your body, the whole somatic awareness. So where is it hurting? And when I say that to kids, they look at me like I'm nuts. What do you mean where? Well, tell me about your tummy. Tell me about your head. One kid said, I have wrists that really don't work. And I went, whatever. Tell me about your body and how it's holding the tension or tightness. That self-awareness can be transferred over to emotional or to mental thoughts. And we got to teach that. Schools are not doing that.
I mean, that's exactly what we talk about with our clients, and we see on calls where they're holding their breath, or they're talking about how often they open up an email and they're immediately right in the stomach. It's like, oh, I just feel like sick, or I get this horrible migraines where I'm just debilitated. But what you guys were just saying, I'm thinking this leads right into another question I had for you, which came up before. One of you, I think Dr. Wayne said, if I share my vulnerability, it will mess with my authority as a parent. That's a line you hear, or that you know a lot of parents feel. But you said that kids appreciate authenticity. So elaborate on that. Parents who don't want to be emotional because they're like, they need to respect me.
My experience is kids can see fake from 20 miles away. They can just feel it. I mean, they don't have the power of authority in the family. They're not adults. They can't tell people when their bedtime's going to be or to eat their Brussels sprouts, but they do know what the vibe is in the house. And I think it's really, really important to be truthful, but also considering where the kid is at. So a mom or any parent can say, I'm not really doing well right now, and that kind of affects how I am with you. I've been yelling a lot. I'm sorry. You don't lose your power. You share your humanity. Kids get that. And I've never, ever, ever seen a kid say, well, you're bad, Mom. It doesn't work like that. People want to feel needed and to share your situation safely. Don't overburden a kid. I've seen parents use their kids as a mini shrink, and I don't think that's healthy at all. The parent and the kid do have a relationship, which has probably been sabotaged by all the junk coming down right now with the divorce and the court orders. So go back to what you know best. When was it good with us? How can we get back there?
Yeah.
Yeah. And we
Barb?
talked before too with there's that fine line. Like I love it when you said don't use your kids, you're not a shrink. The kids are not a shrink. So there is that fine line of how much do you put on your kids or not. So sharing how you're doing is great, but going into, well, your dad did this to me and this, or your mom did this to me and this is why I'm all ticked off right now. And okay, that's too much. So there's that fine line where you do need to be vulnerable and be able to share how you're doing, and you're modeling that. Again, like I was saying with the emotional language, you're modeling. It's okay to say, yeah, I'm really frustrated. They didn't show up again. I'm frustrated too, because I was thinking you were going to go have a great time with them and I was all excited for you. I'm frustrated and I'm disappointed too, and that's okay. But to get into, they're such a loser, they do this all the time, and oh my gosh, not helpful. And as much as you want to say that, blurting that stuff out in front of the kids, again, they internalize that. So, you just have to kind of keep that stuff in check. So it's important.
Yeah. Another thing that we had mentioned a while ago, and I can't even remember what what the stepping stones were, but to stay on the theme of stepping stones, you talked about standing with firmness. What does that mean? I didn't take enough notes on that.
I guess you're talking about it from, tell me what you're talking about it from, the parent's perspective or the kid's perspective, because there'll be a different response.
Give me both, actually.
We're talking about boundaries here, talking about setting new boundaries. I'm kind of queasy. I'm in an uncomfortable place. I haven't been at a place where I can get beyond my fear and just say, that's my line in the sand. And I'm going to want to retreat back to where I was before. So that boundary setting isn't just a one time, oh, that feels good. I've done it once. You got to keep doing it again and again. And one of the rules of thumb Dr. Barb and I have is the 7 repetitions rule that teachers know about. Take 7 repetitions with new information before it becomes a habit. So you might ask the question, where are you in the sevens rule? Well, I'm about 3. Okay, well, I'm about 6. So you kind of know where you're at. By the way, that only works if people are awake and alert. If they're not, then the joke is kids can get new stuff in 5 to 7 times, but it takes administrators 40. So it depends on who you're talking to.
Yeah. Okay, so that was with the boundaries. So like not just I'm so happy I said I was getting off the call, and the next time when they push me and push me, I'll capitulate and do what they want.
And just say, I was making light of where you are in that 7 cycle. Staying to a new boundary, this is a new identity for myself, whether it's a kid or an adult. And for a kid, they got to go up against a power thing. The adult is still more powerful. And if the adult hasn't been acting in a way that's modeling positive behavior, the kid's confused. What is appropriate? What is healthy? So it's very difficult in dealing with trauma not to re-traumatize someone by getting too quickly into, you got to make sure you stand firm. Standing firm is, this is the best I can do and it's better than what I did before. And keeping that conversation going.
Yep.
Great line. I want to write it down, but I want to keep talking, so I'll just get it later. So Barb, I don't know if you want to say anything about that.
Well, and the other thing I think about too is I always think of energy, and that ties in with boundaries as well. Imagine yourself that you're in like a bubble and you're trying to deflect this energy that's coming at you. And when there's all this negative energy, you can't stand firm. You're wobbly, right? You can't catch your balance. You're falling all over the place. In my parenting class, I have a scenario where you're walking down the street and you slip on a banana peel and you're flailing and you're trying to like catch yourself and you're all over the place, right? Because you're slipping. But to be able to imagine yourself like you're in a bubble and you're deflecting, it's like a force shield, right? You're really deflecting that negative energy because that energy is harmful and you don't want that. So again, that's part of the boundary. It's like, if I can feel that energy, not today. I'm not going to let that in my bubble today. That's not helping me or my child.
Yeah, and we should say that this is not easy at all.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh,
Oh.
that's a very important point, Lisa. I think we have to be more comfortable with dealing with failures as we're learning to get that bubble out there, get that boundary out there. And it's hard work. It's hard emotional stuff, especially if we haven't been supported in that through our family systems or through our childhood. So kudos to those people who are trying. And it really helps to have an informed, loving guide on the side.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so speaking of trauma and helping people deal with it, this is a huge issue with our people. How do you help someone whose kids are trauma bonded to an unhealthy person, specifically a parent?
You have to decide, as the non or the less traumatized parent, where you're going to be putting your energy. And to make it real simple for kids, I'm saying, where are you putting your attention? So are you got your finger in the outlet and you're electrified by thinking and being too plugged into a negative place and one of the parents? How do you feel about that? Do you want that? If you want something else, where are you putting your energy? Put your energy in those healthier places. And that's where the therapy helps. That's where the trusted adult that's in your life, could be third party, could be another family member like a grandparent or uncle. If you start thinking about those positives, then you get a relative balance. So you're not totally plugged in to a negative place. Where do you put your attention? And most people don't know. they haven't been asked such a ridiculous question. But when you ask it often enough, people will go there. They'll tell you. Well, it's very, very dramatic and it's hard to pull away. So, do you want that much drama? You start to work with whatever you're getting in that moment. And I want to underscore what you said, Lisa. It's hard. It's damn hard. And it's doable.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, when you just gave that example, I was thinking of one of my children who also had this issue for a little while. And but every time he'd come back, he'd be really miserable after seeing the other parent who had basically walked out of his life, and all kinds of other details I won't get into. But I would say, do you notice, like, you come back every single time and you're so angry and upset? Like, why do you keep allowing yourself? And again, he was an older teenager. He was not a little boy at the time. But why do you keep allowing someone to treat you like that? Like, just keep paying attention. You're miserable every single time, and that's what something, after several thoughts and reflection, him being able to reflect on his feelings, he was like, you know what? I don't know why. I don't know why I keep doing it, because it hurts every single time. And so he stopped. But it was so painful as a parent for me for those couple of years before that, to watch him keep like beating his head against the wall and expecting things from the other person, the other parent, that he was never going to get. And it's unfair. And, he should have had a lot more than he did. But, what can you do?
You're bringing something up that's very important, Lisa, and that's really knowing deep down what you can control and what you can't control. And some of that can change. Sometimes, I think a kid has antenna and they know what they can get away with a parent, either one that's very, very negative or one that's very much more positive. And I think kids learning what they can control in their life and what they can't control in their life gives them a sense of empowerment and confidence. And that really helps in dealing with trauma.
Yeah. I also think about like really staying in the moment too. Like right now, this is not the best relationship, or this isn't feeling good right now. And so, again, especially if it's an older teen and they have the control if they want to go or not. So, are there any good things that come out of going over to the other parent's house? What do you get out of that relationship, or going over there? What's good? And, I've had kids actually say, I don't want to see the other parent right now. And I'll say, that's okay. That doesn't mean forever. That just means like, this is where we're at right now. And you just need you need a breather. You need a little bit of time. And that doesn't mean you're not going to see this other parent down the road. And again, older teens are much better at verbalizing this. And they're, again, just being aware, like Dr. Wayne said, is so important. But just recognizing that, where all of you are right now is just right now. It's not forever. I love the word yet, like, or I was talking to a parent actually this morning, and I said, you want to work with this other parent, you want to co-parent, but right now it's just not working. And that's okay, but that doesn't mean you can't co-parent later. But for right now, you can still support your child, but it's just going to look a little differently than you were anticipating. And like you said too, Dr. Wayne, like sometimes we have expectations like it's going to be this and it's not this. So just recognizing it's like, that's just where we are right now. What can we do to all be as healthy as we can right now and not be screaming at each other and not at each other's throats, but be there in a place where we can still do our healing. But down the road, hey, who knows, right? Things can change later.
Yeah, Chris is saying we use yet all the time. And my daughter's therapist helped me with my own situation. I was like, I'm so frustrated because of the court stuff. And she said, she's like, I have a very simple exercise for you. What are you worried about? And I said, my story is never going to come out. I've been to court, at that time, like 50 whatever times, and nobody's listened. She said, let's change it to, my story hasn't been heard yet. And just that word was so disarming. And she was right, because it did get heard. It's still being heard and things are happening, but it just felt like it would never happen. And I love how you stay focused in the present. Like right now, hasn't happened yet, but it doesn't mean that things can change. And like Chris just said in his comment, like we do tell our clients that, it feels like it's never going to happen. It feels like things are going to be in this miserable place forever, but it's not true. So just keep that in mind, and being on that other side of it to be able to say, no, I felt the same way you did is very comforting too.
I think it's also important to ask what the right fit is. So when I hear Dr. Barb say yet, to me, in my mind, that's a comma. And yet there could be a different possible set of outcomes. But unless you're thinking about what the right fit might be for you, you probably won't see an answer coming by when it does. So that's a hard thing to articulate. I don't know what right fit is. And if you can say something and something close to it comes, it never manifests exactly as you thought. But asking that question is really helpful in focusing on the positive. It's so easy to go back to the negative. It dominates my awareness. What would a positive right fit look like? And that also increases the chances that the conversation will get more healthy rather than less healthy.
Yeah. And I also ties in really nicely with parenting plans, because I get a lot of people that come to me thinking, I've got to create this parenting plan that's going to last for 10 years and it's the gold star parenting plan. And I always say to them, here's what we know for sure. Your children are going to get older. They just are. And that 2-year-old, that is the parenting plan. We're trying to create a 2-year-old plan, or, for a 2-year-old, they're going to be 10. And then they're going to be 14, and then they're going to be 18, and that plan is not going to work. And going through the system, people feel like, oh my gosh, I have to have this perfect parenting plan. And so with younger kids especially, I'll work with parents around, let's create a plan that's 3 months or maybe 6 months, and then we're going to revisit. We're going to get together again, and we're going to revisit that and see what worked and what didn't, and know that your children are always the gauge. They are going to let us know if this is working or not. If you have young children and they're regressing in any way, that plan is not working. We need to do something different. And so we have to keep an eye on the kiddos. And that's where, again, having a therapist in place is nice, because they can be that advocate for the child, and they can see these changes and help kids through the changes. But that all ties in with, the parenting plan could just be this big instead of, this big. It doesn't have to be a 10-year plan. And
well, Barb, I need to ask you about that, because we deal with a lot of parenting plans, and always high conflict parenting plans. And we say, you want to get something to avoid going back to court. So when I hear you say 3 months, I'm like, no, we don't want to tell them to do a 3-month plan. So you want to talk about that, because your role is different.
Well, yeah. And we don't want them to go back in court. And again, mediators work differently, but I see clients regularly. I have parents that I will see every 3 to 6 months. Why? I have parents where I might see them. All right, let's figure out the fall parenting schedule. And so we'll do that. And then we'll reconvene at the end of December. How did the fall go? Is there anything we need to change? How are the kids doing? Okay, let's look at January through May. Let's see if we can get the next chunk done. And they're willing to come back to see me, for another hour or whatever it takes, so that they don't have to go back to court, and they don't have to, get the attorneys to file motions back and forth and spend more money on that. I know not all mediators do it that way, but for me, my goal is, I don't want you back in court, but let's work together and figure this out. So it can be smaller chunks, but I have lots of clients that have not gone back to court and don't plan on it, because we have continuous sessions where we continue to get together and just revisit.
Right. So it's almost like you're better than a co-parenting coordinator, because you have more authority to tweak these legal agreements.
Right. Yeah, I'm helping them make decisions. And again, like I have a family where one parent has an attorney, the other doesn't. And the mom's attorneys always wants to run back to court. Like, well, we'll just file something. He's not compliant. And mom's like, I don't really want to do that. Let's talk to Dr. Barb, and we'll meet up again. And then we get through the next chunk. And as we've done this, what's happening? The kids are getting older and things are changing. Just as
Yep.
already beginning. And so one of the kids now is old enough, she can say where she wants to be when. And that has all happened in the year and a half that I've been working with them. Is the oldest has gotten older. And so now we're looking, and now they're talking about this one child particularly differently. Like, she had very different parenting time because she was older than the other kids did. And they were all okay with that. And I talked to the kids separately to get their input. And this girl was so excited because she's like, here's what I want. And oh my gosh, my parents actually respected that.
Yeah, and we talked about, just you and I, Dr. Barb, on one of our prior Instagram lives, how this is a way for a child's voice to be heard. And it's in the family court system, but it's not actually in court. So it does make a difference for the impact on their lives without having to drag them in before a judge and all the drama and trauma that can come from that kind of situation.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And every
Okay.
different too on ages. I see a question coming in about when can kids say, it's very different. And it depends on the child, developmentally, where's the child at? A 12-year-old might be very mature in one case, and in another case, no way, that child is not ready to say where I can be when. And so again, that's where having a therapist in place is nice, because I sound like a broken record, sorry, but you want someone that has the voice of the child top of mind. And that's not always mom or dad, right? Because everyone's kind of caught up in everything. So I think it's really important to, it's case by case. That's why all my cases, it's you're a whole new set of people. You guys can do this. You guys are going to make these decisions together if we're all meeting together. And it's not a formula. And sadly, I've just seen too many formula parenting plans that those are the ones that fall apart. They're not durable agreements.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So then I'm just checking time because I know we're all very chatty, and if Chris were here, this would have gone on way longer. So we've got just a few more minutes because we want to keep it under an hour so I can do neat little sound bites. But Dr. Wayne, you had said that you have a sneaky backward way of training parents. Let's talk about that.
That's how you're going to end the podcast?
Yeah.
I'm sneaky? No.
I love it.
It's getting the goal. How do we help parents? Whatever works.
The final repartee is how to be sneaky. I got it. There's like low-hanging fruit and the higher-hanging fruit. And most of what happens in a teaching learning situation is people go after the low-hanging fruit. And then we'll even grade you and have standards and testing and all that. Getting the higher fruit is hard, and we don't have ways of measuring that so well. So the best thing I've learned is just trick people. Because if you say we're going to go do that, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't go there. The stubbornness comes up, and it's a good reason. Last time they went there, they got hurt. So I cajole them into thinking we're having a good time and rolling on a wonderful lesson, and I throw in something abruptly. Whoa, where did that come from? And they answer, and then that's a way that we can start towards healing again.
That's not the answer that you told me before.
Well,
I'm going to remind. It had to do with.
The answer was it? Maybe I'll.
No, the one that you talked about is how you basically the way that you get to parents is through the kids. Because I'm like, how can you help parents? And you had said, that's the one I'm looking for.
It's still about sneaky, because most parents will do anything for their kids. And there's that love bond that just exists in so few places in our world. And one of the things that Dr. Barb and I do is have something called Each One Teach One. So we have parents teaching particular skills, capacity building skills, how to become a bigger person, have a bigger heart. And the parents will teach that to kids, and the kids will teach mindfulness skills. They're human skills that everyone needs. Learn how to chill to the parents. And they're having a really rich conversation. And it's kind of sneaky because kids saying the same thing that a therapist would say or a friend would say, that would be totally rejected by the parent. The parent's going to hear from the kid. That's the sneaky piece.
Yep.
Interesting. See, that's not a bad sneaky. That's a good sneaky.
It's a good
that gets
sneak.
the goal.
It's a good sneak.
Yeah. What do we have? The line, you got to play the role to get to the goal. So
That's it.
whatever works.
Yep.
Okay. So I don't know if you guys have a couple of last words before we end, but thank you so much for coming back again.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I've enjoyed the conversation, not only face to face with the two of you, but also with the people who are texting in. Fabulous questions.
Yes.
I don't know know why I can't see any of the questions. Like you guys, Barb said, I got a question. I'm like, I don't see anything. So, but it doesn't matter.
I have it
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll get more questions because people see, I think most people see the recordings and then they ask afterwards.
Yes.
So why don't you both say how people can find you?
We have a website. It's about honoring your greatness. It's called Great Masters Inc.com. So go there. We have a program for folks going through divorce, and we have a program for people trying to find purpose, and it's a way to contact us.
Yep.
Okay.
And then I have a website called courtparentclass.com. And so I do the required parent education classes in the state of Colorado and all over. Actually, I have people around the country that take that class, and then mediation and parent coaching. And so people can find me through there. And I'll do discovery calls with folks. So if they want to, maybe potentially work with me, they'll contact me through the site and shoot me an email. So you're always welcome to, reach out, and we'll answer questions and guide you to some resources. So
Good. And so you guys are national. It's not just limited by state.
right.
True.
Right.
Great.
We both
Great.
do a lot of our work through Zoom, which is helpful.
Yes.
Yeah, us too. We do all our work through Zoom.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks guys for coming back again. And I'm sure this is again only the second in a series of more.
Thank you so much. It's
Thank
great.
you.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank
Talk
you.
soon. Okay. Bye.
Bye.